Coming up on show 898, we introduce you to the all new VW ID.4 and ask, is it any good? Also on the podcast today, we are talking about Tesla saying that their Tri-Motor Model S is really very quick, and Lucid saying their Tri-Motor Lucid Air is really very quick. Also, we are talking about some new cars, Vauxhall, Opel, electric car, new MG, electric car, Volkswagen, hybrid, BMW launching battery modules, and a big Chinese automaker doing a big fundraising for their next big growth. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're listening around the world. Welcome to EV News Daily for Thursday, 24th of September. My name is Martyn Lee, and I go through every EV story so you don't have to, and I love to go through the news because it is just full of positivity and optimism and things that remind me every single day. I know the news cycle and Twitter can be a negative place, but this is my little hangout for 20 minutes every single day of just feel-good stories about a brilliant, clean, green, electric future that we are barreling towards at a rate of knots. And thank you so much as well for your comments, your really kind comments on yesterday's show, which did take a mammoth effort to put together. Not trying to humble brag or anything, just because there was a lot of stuff on Tesla's battery day which I didn't understand fully in order to... I could have just read stuff out and just told you the news, but I always... this podcast is all about telling you the news and then what it means. What do you need to know and why is it important? Because that saves you time. Saves you time having to go through all those things and thinking about that stuff. And so in order to do that, I had to fully understand it myself. And frankly, I had to go away and look at a bunch of stuff for about 24 hours to work out what the heck was Elon talking about here. I'm not exactly a chemist graduate grade now, but I feel much better at understanding the things that were talked about and some of the implications as well. But I've got so much more to learn as well. So thank you very much for everyone that commented on YouTube and sent me emails to go, you know what, you hit the spot. It was a good show. We liked it. Do more of the same, please. All right, let's get into the news today. By the way, the all new VW ID.4 was launched. It was an online launch, pre-recorded, 15 minutes long. Wasn't a big flashy live thing. It was a YouTube premiere, as in it counted down and everyone watched it at the same time. But it wasn't the millions of people that viewed a Tesla battery day, but it was still a pretty good event, pretty cheesy typical car launch, where the head of the company gets to stand there and do their thing, it was good. It was professional, it was slick. It was a little bit cheesy in places because they had a couple of their brand ambassadors, sports people and stuff, where they're like, hey, I see you're driving the new ID.4. Yes, well, thank you for reminding me about what a great boot space it's got. Anyway, I think people see through that. They have done for a long time, but, big companies still do it. Moving on. What are the prices? Well, I watched the US launch with the US VW boss, Scott Keogh. So I'll do the US prices and then we can talk a bit about other currencies. It starts at $41,190, including destination fee. I know that's different to what you might have seen. You may have seen it starts at less than 40 grand, but in this country, they're not allowed to advertise a car without all the extra stuff in the advertised price. Otherwise, you might as well just say, it's without doors and wheels, and then you add them on at the end. But I gather in the US, that it's a done thing that you can add destination fees at the end. This is like $1,200 destination fee, even when they make it in America. And so, you know what? I'm just adding it onto the price. So that is $41,190 is what you'll pay before the dealers do you a deal. I don't think they will be because it's going to be in very, very short supply. After the federal tax credit, if you are eligible for that, it's $33,690, which is very, very competitive for a car with an 82 kilowatt hour battery, which is 77 kilowatt hours usable. So that, in other words, again, if you're new to the podcast, I always try and keep this really accessible to anybody. There's 5 kilowatt hours of the battery, which they don't let you use. So when your dashboard says it's at 100%, it's not really, and that isn't unique to VW or indeed battery electric cars or indeed any battery consumer device like the phone or iPad you might be listening to this podcast on. They all do it, and they do it for battery longevity. So lithium-ion batteries don't tend to like being charged all the way up to the very top and drained all the way down to zero, and so companies use a thing called a BMS, a battery management system, in order to protect what we call the top and bottom end. And so There's a 5 kilowatt hour buffer, which is good. It's good. It means the battery is going to last a really long time and you can't really abuse it. So feel free to charge that car to 90, 95, 100% because it's not really 100%. It's got 201 horsepower. Launch edition is rear wheel drive, but all wheel drive comes next year. It's got an EPA estimated range, and it hasn't been tested by the EPA, of 250 miles. A little on the low side. I think EPA testing will be done and it'll be higher because it's 77 kilowatt hours usable. It looks like it's pretty slippery. Engineering's good from VW. The ID.4 is a bigger car. It is an SUV crossover shape. It charges pretty quickly. It charges at 125 kilowatts. And that is, you know, for most people buying that car, I reckon that's a good sweet spot. If you're looking at price versus faster charging, etc., 100, 125, 150, I think for the mainstream, I think for most people, it's a sweet spot. Now, look, you and I might want the fastest possible charging in the world, and, you know, maybe I'm a bit too much of an EV nerd at times, but that's good enough. 3 years of free charging on Electrify America, which isn't surprising because Electrify America is indeed a Volkswagen thing because it's the entity which was set up by Volkswagen. They had to do it with the fine they got given for being very, very naughty in the US. So 3 years free charging, which will be a massive reason for people to overcome that objection. So if they walk into their VW dealer, maybe they've always had Tiguan. This is a similar size to a Tiguan, bit smaller than a Tesla Model Y, while I think about it, and say, oh yeah, but where am I going to charge it? And the sales person can say, you get 3 years free charging on that charger down the road. And, you know, I've heard some better things about Electrify America recently. I gather that at places, reliability still sucks, but they're trying to change that. Over-the-air updates, of course, that's platform specific, so whatever VW car they release now is always going to be over-the-air updates. The batteries, look, it's absolute best of the best. It's LG Chem, who Tesla use, and loads of car companies use LG. Great battery supplier. Pouch cells in this one, 288 pouch cells. Stat fans, I like this. What are your thoughts? It looks good. I think it looks vanilla. Stay with me. It looks vanilla in the way that sometimes you really crave vanilla ice cream, right? You don't even want a raspberry ripple when it's got a little bit of zhuzh to it. Nah, you just want the vanilla. And when you want that, you'll love this. And I mean that as a compliment, right? It's going to blend in. If you don't want a car that stands out as being an EV, this looks like a VW any other car, crossover SUV. Looks nice, looks good in the studio shots, looks good in the action shots they've taken. The driving shots. Rather daftly, many car makers still won't use a global trim name. Now, Tesla do, some do, but car makers will say that their marketing departments have very good reasons for calling it different things in different markets. So I can't really compare the US specs, as it were, which is called the Pro. There's the first edition and the Pro. Now, that is not the same as what we are going to get here. I forget, like the UK ones and the European ones as well. That the spec levels are called different things. And I think even you get different things in, even if it was equivalent specs, you get different things. Like, I think over here a heat pump. I'm pretty sure VW UK have said heat pump is an option. Now, I can't find anywhere on the VW US site that even mentions a heat pump. So it's really tough in order to find these kind of commonalities amongst when they call them different things. But it's still... they did it with the Ford Mach-E as well, winds me up. However, whatever trim level, I think it's going to be an attractive car. From Car Magazine here in the UK, it's going to go on sale in 2 different limited editions. It's going to be called the First and the First Max, whereas in the US it's called the First Pro. Anyway, the first version has 20-inch wheels, heated seats, parking camera, 2-zone climate, adaptive cruise, nav, more, level 2, advanced level 2 driver assist. So it's not going to drive you to work on its own, but it's, absolutely solid. Things like advanced driver assistance systems. In Germany, the very first version is going to cost €50,000, but they have big incentives over there that take almost 10 grand off a car. Over here, not as much, 3.5 grand off. UK price tag will be around 45,000 UK pounds, as long as the car grant sticks around. And somebody texted me yesterday to say, but don't forget about import duty when January comes around because of Brexit, and I tried to ignore all of that happening. But yes, it does appear that if a car isn't made here, we're going to be paying a ton of money in extra taxes. to get cars. Brilliant. Brexit keeps delivering. Let's not go there. Our lovely politicians that couldn't organise something in a brewery. I asked for your questions. Justin says, I like it, but it needs a range of 300 miles. Well, Justin, look, the WLTP range, I believe, is now 323. When they first announced this car, it was, I think it was called the Cross, the Zs. It was going to be like 300 and something, but it's now 323 on the UK website. So I think EPA is going to be higher. Anton says, no four-wheel drive until summer and autumn 21. Which is a negative for him, but a clear attempt by VW to limit Model Y sales, says Anton. I see your point, but I don't know if a Tesla buyer is really going to look at the VW ID.4 and go, ooh, I'll have one of those instead. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts on this, and a few people in my comments as well. Still with a question mark, trust issues over VW. They even mentioned it in the presentation. So, big segment today on VW ID.4. It's going to be a mega car, and just to prove it, it's now sold out in the US, at least the first edition. But rumours say that it was only going to be, this is the one that comes by the end of the year, that there were going to be like 2,000 of them coming into the US. Oh my goodness me. Of course, they're made in Germany and exported. It's just a crazy small number, whatever it is, but it's sold out. So on the US website now, all you can go for is the VW ID.4 Pro Edition, which they list as $39,995 because they don't have to list those extra fees. So a bit of a shame that the first edition is gone, but I like this car a lot. My comments on Twitter seemed, I think generally I'd say like 80% very, very positive as well, and people like it. And Autoblog saying that the VW ID.4 is going to be a very, very big deal. That's their phrase. It says the ID.4 comes closest to filling the electric gap, and it'll benefit from 3 years charging at Electrify America, says Autoblog, and they like the price. The average transaction price of a car in the US, I didn't know this, 37,851. And so by the time 37,851, by the time you take off federal tax credit, and this is 33, then this is so much cheaper than the average car in the US. And that, when you put it in that perspective, I hadn't thought about it like that until I read it in Autoblog today. I was like, oh, right, okay. This isn't a cheap car, don't get me wrong. $30,000 is not cheap. But some people are going to be leasing this. The lease deals are $379, so $379 with $3,000 down and 10,000 miles. Okay, that all of a sudden starts to be interesting to a lot of people. Let me know your thoughts, please. Big segment, 12 minutes of the podcast today about the ID.4. It's a massively important car, and I'd love to know your thoughts, please, either on YouTube or you can email me. This is good. Electrify Canada are installing overhead canopies at EV charging stations across Canada. Maybe EV drivers in Canada have battled the rain, the heat, a snowstorm or two, and so these canopies look nice, really stylish actually, pretty high, but they should still do a good job of protecting you and the chargers from some pretty hardcore weather that my Canadian listeners get. The first one to be installed at the Canadian Tire in Agincourt. The Electrify America network plans to extend these overhead protection canopies to most of its locations. I mean, heck, if anyone is listening from a charging company to this podcast, put them into all of them, because the worst thing, every day, everywhere around the world is some sort of weather. Now, I must admit, ours is pretty boring here. Most days it's just cold and cloudy. But whether it's hot and sunny and rainy and stormy and snowing, there are so many times when you don't want to be outside of your car with the cap, undoing, getting a cable. I mean, a bit like, I don't know, every petrol station in the world. Please do the same for us EV drivers. So, the big battle of who can make the quickest three-motor car. Tesla put a video online, last time I saw it was at 2 million views, of their Tri-Motor Model S Plaid Edition. So 3 motors, lapping Laguna Seca. Elon talked about this at Battery Day, 0 to 60. And you know what? They didn't even give specific stats. Clever, hey? Got to get it pretty early in the AM to outfox Elon, because he didn't even give a number. He just said less than 2. Quarter mile, less than 9. which means that Lucid couldn't conquer it with a number, you know, 0.1 quicker, which was kind of smart, I guess. Or the alternative view is they can't actually make that car yet, and they've given themselves 12 months to work out how to engineer a car that goes that quickly. But they did post a video online of the car lapping Laguna Seca, and holy moly, it's really, really quick. I've watched this lap so many times. You know what's really impressive? Like, we all know cars go 0 to 60, EVs go 0 to 60 really quickly. Most of them 0 to 30 really quickly. And the more expensive ones 0 to 60. And some of them 0 to 100, crazy fast. But watching this lap, when it comes out of the medium to fast corners, and I like my racing, so this was right up my street. But in other words, if you're exiting a corner at 60 or 80 miles per hour, maybe 100 miles per hour, they've got a shot of the speed on the Model S in this video, and I'll pop a link in the show notes so you can see it, and it just builds speed so quickly. Now, we know EVs do the off-the-line sprint quickly. This was massively impressive, so that is mega, mega cool. But what about Lucid? Well, Lucid just tweeted out a video showing their upgraded Tri-Motor Lucid Air doing the drag strip in 9.245 seconds. 157 miles an hour, and that is better than the quickest supercar which you can buy. Go check out the video. Again, I'll pop a link in the show notes if you want to. Of course, Tesla fans will be saying, well, hang on a minute, that's slower than the new Model S. And Lucid fans will be saying, yes, but ours actually exists. There's actually a number on this one. Oh, look, I mean, I'm not getting involved in the fight. I think both are amazing, amazing cars. That's so cool. And I will point out, you can buy neither of these. So I'll let the fans of both of those brands bicker amongst themselves. But it's brilliant news that, once again, petrol heads are left scratching their heads because they're like, oh, we got beaten by an electric car again. Yeah. Sorry, guys and girls, electric cars, as they say on the homepage of mokka-e, electric cars are better. A few new cars to tell you about. The Opel Mokka-e / Vauxhall Mokka-e is now on sale, and the UK pricing is $30,840. I really like the cars coming out of the PSA group. That's Peugeot, Citroën, and the Vauxhall / Opel Mokka. I've mentioned these stats a million times. 50 kilowatt hour battery, like on the E2008, 200 miles WLTP range, plus or minus, 100 kilowatts DC charging. I think the videos I've seen of people doing this with the existing cars on the road just about hit that. And again, if you're a fan of the brand or you just get a good deal, then, or maybe you've had the petrol one before and now you want the electric one. So fingers crossed the UK grant sticks around a little bit longer. An even cheaper car is the MG5. That is the next car from MG. We had the MG ZS EV, a car that is certainly, you know, you get a lot for your money with that car, but now the MG5 is out, a pure electric estate car. Hallelujah! Hallelujah. I love me an estate car. It turns out nobody else does. When I was looking at sales figures for estates, whatever you want to call them, wagons, sportback, fastback, yeah, nobody buys them. I bloomin' love an estate car. And now the MG5 is finally on sale here in the UK. 214 miles, 53.2 kilowatt hour battery, 115 kilowatt motor. And we know that the MG ZS EV, the SUV, was a popular car. Fourth, correct me if I'm wrong, fourth best-selling EV in the UK so far this year. And so I think this is going to be also a really popular car as well. So it's 25 grand, which is a very compelling price. That is with the grant already taken off, by the way. There'll be some finance deals on that, I imagine, if you want to get into an MG estate car. Yes! So practical. If you've got dogs, kids, stuff. I mean, everyone's got stuff, right? Why wouldn't you have an estate car? Just bloomin' fantastic. And also, new Volkswagen Golf GTE has been released, and the GTE was one of the things that got me excited about plug-in hybrids way back in the day when they first released the Passat GTE and the Golf GTE, and now it's got better. I mentioned this on the podcast recently, but it's now on the market, so it's got its 13 kilowatt hour battery, 50% bigger than the previous one. And for anyone that's not ready to go full EV yet, it's the new Golf. It's just the best iteration they've made of a Golf that's been around forever and is a really solid car. £36,000 starting price for that. Right, a couple more stories. BMW is launching a battery module production plant in 2021. BMW is expanding their battery production facilities in Germany after BMW opened an eDrive centre in Germany and a battery centre in China over the summer. The BMW plant in Germany is now building battery models from 2021, says Electrify.com. BMW will invest more than 100 million euros by 2022 to occupy a plant of 10,000 square metres, 150 employees working in the factory and scaling up large-scale production within the factory. So they are buying the cells in. This is a different way of doing it, right? So they're buying the cells in, but they want to make the batteries themselves. And it's a bit of a kind of hybrid way of doing it, a bit of a Tesla way of doing it with Panasonic in charge of making the cells. Well, they kind of both do bits, actually. It's not a perfect example, but again, it's the way they're doing it for cars like the BMW iX3, which is the next BMW coming very soon, made in China, that one. And finally, talking China, last but by no means least, simply because this was the one that came across my desk later in the day today, the Chinese electric vehicle startup WM Motor. Now, we have had them on the podcast before. Rupert Mitchell, as long-term listeners will know, been on the podcast twice and a supporter of this show as well. And fascinating, always fascinating to talk to him. He is somebody who understands that Chinese market inside out. It's great to pick his brain, actually, on what Chinese buyers want. Affordability, connected, not really bothered about performance as much. But WM Motor, like if I compare them to something like NIO make a more upmarket, luxurious type of Chinese car. But if we're looking at those Chinese startups like WM Motor, are much more affordable. So they go for affordable, connected cars. And it's something like $21,000 equivalent for their base model. And they just pocketed an investment to fuel growth in the company. It's been around 5 years, and they just raised $1.47 billion in a Series D round, and that's to pay for more R&D, branding, marketing, and expansion of their sales channel. I think their biggest funders, as in or backers behind it, are companies like Baidu and Tencent, and a company that I really, really rate as well, doing some very interesting things there. Not many Chinese companies actually make their own cars as well, so over 30 or 35,000 models shipped of one of their cars so far. So that's just a fantastic story there from what was it, the EX5 that Rupert was telling me about. Like 30,000 of those have been delivered now, and like $22,000 equivalent. You absolutely can't argue about that. And they're looking at all the things that the Chinese buyers want, which is possibly not owning the battery, a very highly connected car, definitely voice control, to fit in with your connected life, so the different voice platforms that you use at home and things like that. So that's the Chinese priorities for their EVs. But everywhere's different. Like it's pretty population dense places in China, and so some people want things like battery swapping because the idea of going to a charger that's full and waiting to even get on a charger and then waiting 40 minutes isn't an option. And so that opportunity charging doesn't really exist. And so actually turning up and spending 3 minutes to swap a battery like NIO do, like that's interesting. So, one size doesn't necessarily fit all. I love learning about the different things around the world where people love EVs of every shape and size. That's your show for today. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. I love today's news. It's just brilliant. And let me know your thoughts on any of those stories. You can leave a comment on the YouTube show or email hello@evnewsdaily.com. Well, there are 897 shows in the archive, and that means that we are 2 away from a big number. 900 will be soon. In fact, next week, a rare week off for me, and so we will hit show 900 in just over a week's time, but we'll do it with a bang, with a brand new premium partner to it. Maybe I'll announce them before I go away. I will. And also a look back at some of the big stories over the last 900 shows. Premium partners for now, until tomorrow: Phil Roberts of Electric Future, Brad Crosby, Avid Technology, Porsche of the Village in Cincinnati, Audi of Cincinnati East, Volvo Cars of Cincinnati East, NationalCarCharging.com and AlohaCharge.com. and Derek Riley from the EV Review Ireland YouTube channel. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow, and remember, there is no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.